one of our stakeholders and executive directors from the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission is going to talk about our regional transit plan. Just want to bring this up. This is kind of a good, exciting thing. So, Christine, if you could just go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Other board members of the board. Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission has been working with Department of Rail and Public Transit, as well as some private consultants, to look at expanding transit within the footprint, which includes Nelson County. We are conducting a public hearing on some draft network designs that the consultant has come up with and how transit can be expanded both within the urban ring, but also out to our urban jurisdictions. They present both a constrained vision, which means assuming a certain set of assumptions about funding, and an unconstrained vision. If they were to meet all of the needs that have been dictated to us without thinking about budget, it presents both of those two network visions. We have a public meeting coming up June 23rd, which I'll share with Nelson County to be putting out to the community. There's also a survey that's going to be available that we would love as much participation in that survey. A transit vision is only as good as representing what the community's vision is and not necessarily what a consultant's is. So we would love to get as much rural participation in that as possible. So I'll be passing that along to you. I just wanted to say a couple minutes about it.
Great, thank you, Christine. All right, now for the fun one, the budget. Candy, take it away.
Obviously, grab one more thing.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, so you might remember this sheet. This is where we ended our last budget work session. We needed to remove $1.1 million related to the proposed increase to the transient occupancy tax. Some areas of expenditure reduction we looked at, including this maintains the $1.5 million with full operational funding. We have a recurring contingency of $881,750. We made a staff adjustment due to our increase in solid waste hauling costs of $132,000, which reduced that recurring contingency to $749,750. We had also budgeted a transfer to debt reserve of recurring revenue of $2,010,000, which made our total available recurring revenue $2,759,750. We suggested offsetting that decrease in the TOT revenue here, which would lead to a subtotal of available recurring revenue of $1,609,619. The staff recommendation was to keep and transfer to debt service reserve of $610,000, and that would realize a $57 million debt capacity in 2023-2024 for some future capital projects for both county and school division. So reducing 1.6 million by the 610,000 provides an adjusted balance of available recurring revenue of $999,619. So I guess we're at the point where we're needing to have a budget to adopt by June 30th. So just need the board to make a decision as far as what you want to do with the transfer to debt service reserve potentially and the recurring revenue contingency, or anything else the board would like to consider.
Right, and one thing to emphasize is it's not just adopting the budget, it's then also appropriating.
Correct, we have to have an appropriated budget by June 30th.
So by the conclusion of our evening meeting, we will need to, if we do finish the budget, continue this meeting to appropriate. And that's a very simple motion. Second. So.
Yes, it just takes some time to, once the numbers are all solidified, to put the resolutions together that the board needs to consider for adoption and appropriation.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to do it all in one time.
Yep, gotcha.
So.
All right, well, great. So at this time, we've discussed the budget. This time is for the board to bring up any items they think pertinent, and then hopefully we'll get around to some motions.
I'm sorry, before you move on to that, if you don't mind, another adjustment staff would like to make is to go ahead and include the 2.6 million in the funds to be used for acquiring the Larkin property.
Right.
And it's just a wash. It would go on the expenditure side and the revenue side, but it does affect the bottom line of the budget. So if we do it now, before July 1st, then
Yep.
we avoid a public hearing and amending the budget thereafter. So I'd like to go ahead and include that
Okay.
as well.
We just need to make sure we have our amendments, right? So that's 2.6 roughly.
Yes, and that would just be, would show those bond proceeds on the revenue side and then property acquisition on the expenditure side.
Okay. All right. Just make sure we get that when we get to motions, and we're adding that in there. All right. Any questions for Candy at this time before the board starts discussing?
I have a question. This is a big question, which hopefully has a simple answer. We have currently, let me see if I have this right. Currently, we've got 3.3 million in our debt service budget. Does that sound right?
I think that's about right.
3.3 million. And that's its own.
That shows up as a transfer to the debt service fund. Currently, we have 3.1 million. And then next year it's proposed to be 7,741,000. And that includes the debt service reserves of the 2.3 million in non-recurring funds. And currently includes the transfer of roughly $2,010,000 in recurring funds.
Okay. And we have, let me see if this is right, $9 million about in unassigned funds. That's the cash flow reserve, is that right?
That's probably close to being right. I haven't assessed the fund balance here recently. But that's typically what you have after you have the 25% cash reserve that is recommended, for cash flow purposes.
So that is the 25% or it's in addition to?
The 9 million?
Yeah.
I think that's, is the 25%. Or actually, I think that's beyond the 25%, I'm sorry, in addition to.
Okay, okay. So, under what circumstances do you feel it's appropriate to tap into those funds?
I mean, usually you want to reserve your fund balance for one-time expenditures, not recurring costs. And that's probably the main criteria, is you don't want to use non-recurring money on recurring expenditures. You can do the opposite, use recurring funds for non-recurring expenditures, but that doesn't affect anything.
Okay, but that cash flow reserve basically is garnishing interest for us.
Yes.
And providing that safety net, so to speak, but that's what
Yes.
That's its function.
Yes.
Okay.
But there's no, currently there's no policy on that or any real definitions of what it can be used for. It's just been loosely used as our kind of safety net, as you described.
Right. Now, some of that cash reserves also plays along with bond ratings, how financial institutions look at us, and equate us, right? To a degree.
Correct, to a degree it does, yes.
All right.
That's it for now.
Any other questions for Candy before we begin discussion? Then we can always ask Candy to come back up here and ask more questions. All right, Candy, thank you so much. And we just need to make sure we have whatever motions, those amendments that we just heard, right? I wrote mine down. All right, 2.6 million.
If you just agree on consensus on what the numbers are supposed to be, I can take note of those and then make sure it's included in the adoption and appropriation resolution.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, so, board, we need to adopt this budget. We've worked real hard on this over several months. I'm sure there'll be more discussion. Some board members mentioned they'd like to revisit the school discussion, and I think that is appropriate. And I think that can be a discussion with itself. Is there anything other than the schools revenue that anyone wants to discuss, other than, I think one thing that actually probably be helpful for housekeeping earnings, if we just go ahead and add the acquisition into the $2.6 million acquisition, as staff has asked. We could probably just go on ahead and add that in there before we do the school discussion and figure out that dollar number. Does that sound reasonable? Okay, Mr. Reed.
I don't expect, I'd like to hear from the board members, but I think that'd be fine.
Yes. Is there any objections to going on ahead and adding the $2.6 million for the Larkin acquisition? No objections from Mr. Harvey, from you. No objections from there. Mr. Reed, you're fine with that. Mr. Parr, you fine with that? All right, everyone's fine. So by general consensus, we've added the $2.6 million. And this will be that. We don't have to worry about talking about it anymore.
Correct.
Okay. Any other items other than the school contribution that you'd like to discuss?
Just a question,
Sure.
Other things, but, the tax that we decided to eliminate, that.
The TOT.
5%.
Right.
So that money we don't have.
We never had it. So that, we didn't budget for it. Correct. We originally budgeted for it. Right. So we originally budgeted for around $1.2 million-ish. Board turned around and it was the general consensus that we no longer wanted to solicit the additional 5% above that 5%.
It was a general consensus, because
You were, yes, generally, four of the 5. And so that's where we're at today, is we are no longer soliciting the TOT increase of 5
So
to 10%.
where is that money coming from that we're not getting?
It would be coming from the recurring revenue as it sits, right, Candy?
Correct.
And we had the funds to offset any expenses, to still continue with the expenses that we have, just not using TOT money.
So we have money available that if we wanted to add to the,
You have $999,000 generally, right?
That's correct. If you agree with, the debt service reserve transfer of the 610,000.
Right. So, which we've already decided on that. So currently, Skip, I'd say there's $900,000 available to do other things. That's not allocated to do anything. Does that make sense? Million. Yeah, we'll just go to $1 million. Splitting hairs.
Does that include using some of that 1.5 that would cover the TOT tax?
So that is after, correct, Candy?
Correct.
So after that, otherwise it would be an additional
Right.
$1.2 million. Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
So that is after we agreed to only keep it at 5%. All right. Well, we'd like to go on to the school discussion. If there's nothing else, I feel like if we're pretty solid on everything else, let's go ahead and begin that. So whoever wants to go start.
I will go ahead and start. I've got some notes, so it'll take a while. I may take up more than my 5 minutes.
That's okay.
Okay. Okay.
We understand.
Okay. It's been, it's been clear that the money that the schools have petitioned us for is primarily for staff, for teachers and support staff. And we had some comments from some teachers who had contacted us with information for us to consider about this. We have, I have the names of people that have contacted us. Haley Osborne, who's taught at Rockfish River Elementary for 8 years, gets the same amount now in terms of teacher salary as a first-year teacher with no experience. Tom Allen, who's been a teacher for 7 years, actually makes less than a new teacher with no experience after being here for 7 years. And the general comment from them comes that teachers are leaving Nelson County due to burnout or because of the perception of being unsupported by the leaders of the community. And Gordon Dalton, who's been a 20-year employee of our school system, said in a letter to the board that it's especially disappointing to see our veteran staff teachers leaving due to relatively low pay we offer our most senior staff. We're shorting our most effective, most experienced, and most committed staff. School administration has done what they have had to do with having unfulfilled and financially unsupported teaching positions by consolidating those positions, which results in more stress, more workload for remaining staff. And his quote was, "This creates a perfect storm of disregard for the sacrifices of teachers." And I got some information from Ms. Irvin, I appreciate this very much, that the years between like 2014 and 2020, I guess up to 2019, we were averaging about a 10% turnover of teachers yearly through either resignation or retirement. And I guess that's kind of the benchmark. In 2019, it went up to 21%. It increased again in 1920, it went up to 21%. Last year, it went up even more. And according to the information that Ms. Irvin gave at the school board meeting the other night, we have 52 teachers, 35 resignations, and 17 retirees, which amounts to 34% of the staff that won't be returning next year. And I would have to say that equates to a crisis. And the reasons for that, clearly, the last couple of years have been more trying than normal, but it's also a direct result of years of staff recommendations to keep school funding below what would be required to equitably pay and retain the school teachers who have been forced to do more with less over this time. And the other thing I'd like to mention in theory is that the costs to the county and to the schools, because of the fiscal benefits that we've had, because we've practiced conservatism in terms of funding the schools. The costs of that have kind of snowballed over the years to where I think that that our schools and teachers are not just economically, but also emotionally underfunded. And there was a survey that was done by the Nelson County Teachers Association, and they gave a rating of about just over 5 out of 10 to how the teachers feel about their job in terms of support. And that support was across the board. It's a general statement. It wasn't just in terms of salary. It was also had to do with school administration at the time. But I said before that we do two things here. We both fund the schools, but we also set a tone for the schools. And setting that tone, I think, is something that trickles down to the administration and then to the staff, and then the staff administration, and then trickles down to the schools. And it has not been a real positive picture over the years. And I've now noticed this since I've been, paying attention to this since I've been here for about 5 years now doing this. So I would just like to put something forth, which is that investing in the schools is really it's really investing in economic development. it's really an investment in the future of the county. It invests in the staff, in the students, in the infrastructure, and they're the kind of investments that build community and build for the future. And I think when we look at economic development, we can't separate the schools from that in terms of, you know, competing for limited financial resources in terms of what economic development means. When we passed the tax rate for this coming year, and I actually made the motion, which of 6.5 for the year after arguing for full funding for the schools. I'd like to note that if we had kept the tax rate at the rate that it was, we would have had the ability to both fully fund the schools and also make the investment to our debt service, which we wanted to do. And we did not have the wherewithal to do that as a board. But that would have been one option that we could have looked at more clearly at that time, if that was a priority. But you know, we have more information that's come to surface since then. We know that I think Shannon said that there's like $65,000 or $70,000 or so that the schools are no longer going to be getting from the state. You know, we still do want to keep our debt service where we want it. But I would like to note two things. One is that we do have almost $1 million of revenue from the budget that's available to be allocated, as Candy notes here with the adjusted balance of the available revenue. We also have the fund that I mentioned early on that currently holds $9 million in it, which we are saving for a rainy day. And I really think that the timing is really now to consider taking a look at that, because we have a huge number of teachers that are leaving. We have a limited pool of teachers to draw from to be able to fill the positions that the budget would hope to fill. And this is a unique situation that it's not perhaps unique across the Commonwealth, but certainly in terms of, as long as I've been paying attention, this is really unique. And I think this is the rainy day that we're looking at. We have an opportunity here to do something for the schools, set a really positive, make a positive action towards the schools, help them in their attempts to either retain or secure teachers for our children and staff. And at the same time, since we're looking at transition both in the county administrator position and school superintendent, to really set a tone for the future to do something positive. And so I would like to propose, and would be willing to make a motion after other people have talked, to allocate an additional $1 million to the schools. And I would consider doing that either from the balance of recurring revenue, or from the $9 million of our reserve. There's just one other thing that I would like to mention that would go with that. At the end of the school budget year, revenues that aren't spent have traditionally gone towards, school board has usually used those for capital improvements, or the money has come back to the county. What is the likelihood that we could actually, that our school board could actually find, fill the positions that they need to have filled with the mass exodus that we are having with teachers? And, what are the chances? And I think it's really slim and none. But I think we should be able to do the very best we can to do that. I think that it's very likely that many of those positions will not be able to be filled. I'm not the person to make these decisions because that's what the school board does, but I'm just, putting this out there. So if it turns out that there's $1 million of salaries that were not expended over the year, if we had allocated that extra $1 million, the school board could end up with some money left over if they've not been able to fill those positions. We've done a really good job, I think, in addressing the capital needs of the schools, and I'm grateful to everybody that's participated in doing that. I think we're doing a good job in trying to bring our boards and our administration together and be able to work together towards getting these things done. But I don't see any reason why, if we were able to put an additional $1 million towards the schools, that the schools could easily end up with $1 million left at the end of their year, I think. And I'm just, again, throwing this out. And if that's the case, then that revenue that we would be dedicating today would not necessarily be a recurring revenue. It would be one that would be able to be, rolled over the following year. Maybe after 2 years, we'd have to take a look at it again. But I've tried to spend as much time as I possibly can in trying to look at these numbers and try to figure out the two comparative budgets that we have. And I do think that this is something that certainly warrants us taking a look at. And that's what I would probably end up proposing unless something better comes along.
Just quick housekeeping, so the staff can keep track of where we are, and that's not a motion, just we're going to wait until the discussion is over. So your suggestion is $1 million in addition to the 1.5.
Yes.
So that would bring the total contribution to 2.5-ish million. Yeah, it's flat number anyway. All right. So that would be just one for staff to keep track.
Yeah. I didn't address the step option, but let me just put one more piece of information out there. My understanding is, if I've got my numbers right, that a 1% step salary increase is about $200,000. So that extra $1 million could translate, if the board decided to do it, into being able to finally equate those steps in the way that the schools have been proposing to do. For the 5 years.
Got it. All right. So
thank you.
all right. So we got that straight there. Who wishes to speak next?
All right, you got a motion?
No, he's not doing a motion.
Everybody needs to, I think,
Discuss
this.
All right. Mr. Barton?
I agree with the idea that money doesn't make good schools. Teachers do. Professional teachers do. What it means to be professional is that you act in the interest of your clients. And your clients, as your teachers, are the children and the parents of those children. If you want to have a really good school system, you have to have professional teachers. You also need to treat them as professionals. Administratively, you need to treat them as professionals. The administrators need to understand that they are facilitators. They don't teach the children directly. If you have dedicated teachers and professional teachers, which you have in Elton County, you will have an excellent school system and you will give your children a real education. What a real education means is that the children think for themselves and can act in their own interest and can create wealth for themselves and act in the best interests of the community. That's what we want, isn't it? We want to have a school system which recognizes the value of our children and sees the potential that is in them. There is a price to be paid for that. But you also must remember there's an enormous cost not to pay that price. In the long run, we need to think in the long run. We need teachers to love our children, to nurture our children, but we also need to love our children. This is not a matter of money. It's a matter of whether we respect what education, what real education will bring to our children. And if we in Nelson County, because of the strength of our community, are capable of doing that,
All right, who else wishes to speak? Ms. Barr?
Are we just doing schools? Thank you for that. Are we just doing operational now? This isn't capital.
Right. Right.
34% of staff, that is a crisis. And I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. We made a commitment years ago as a school board to adjust the salary scales to attract newer teachers, and it was very heavy on the early end. And that was intentional, and it did and does kind of, when you're an 8, 9-year teacher and you're making the same as a new teacher, that doesn't sit well. And for whatever reason, it was a decision that we made as a board. Shannon and I were on the board at the time. It worked. We were at the high end of paying new teachers, and it attracted a lot of people. But one thing that I've noticed is for the team, and we keep saying teachers, and I hate that we do that because to me, I think our teachers, there are some bumps that I think the school board could work out with the pay scale and kind of help to level out some of that. I've always liked a shorter rather than a 10-year, 3 or 4 or something, little scales. But we got to keep in mind the support staff. That, to me, that's the most pressing need that we have as a division. I've always said the 2 most important people in the school building are the secretary and the janitor. And if those 2 people are taken care of, they're going to take care of everybody else. And so I think we say teacher a lot, and I hope we don't forget that there's a whole other section of bus drivers and support staff and cafeteria and all that we need to be aware of. But I know of 3 individuals in one school that have personally told me that they've left. One left the profession. One left for lower pay and an assistant left. Not because of money, but because of the environment. And that's an issue that we have to address, and we don't have to address it, it's not our job, but it has to be addressed, is the environment for our educators today is extremely difficult. And it's driving, and it's a nationwide crisis. You see it everywhere. You know, you read articles all the time about teachers leaving and why they're leaving and the stresses of the job and unintended consequences and no child left behind and all the things that are put on our educators. Money's nice and money helps, but money doesn't solve the problem. You know, we've got proof right here of just a couple of examples, but that's not going to solve everything. And the day we start dipping into our savings account to pay ongoing recurring expenses, that's a problem. And while one person may see it as we didn't have the wherewithal to keep taxes at a 25% increase, 40% for some people, I felt that I stand behind our decision to adjust the tax rate, and I wish we could have adjusted it more because people still had a 20% rate increase in what they paid out of pocket for their taxes, even though we lowered the tax rate. So I will agree to disagree on that. But you know, you say we need professional teachers, and I think every teacher is a professional. You know, some may have more of their heart in it than others, but every one of them is a professional, and I'll give that to everyone. But that heart doesn't come from a paycheck. That heart, teachers like you, Mr. Barton, your heart and your passion for that position didn't come just from a paycheck. It came from the person that you are. And we're very fortunate in Nelson County to have some incredible educators and their support staff. But I could not vote to agree to dip it into our recurring reserve for our, in the recurring revenue as well. That was one of the adjusted balance of available recurring revenue where the million came from. And definitely not out of our reserve, but that's where I am.
Okay. All right. Mr. Harvey?
I'm ready to get in.
Okay. All right.
It's been justified what they have presented. And I'm ready to get into it.
Well, my final comments on this topic is, before we get to motions, is, you know, I can already name, we're going into a recession. That's just a fact. It's going to be, you know, we see it every day with interest rate changes. We're seeing it with the impact on so many constituents as inflation participates. And that inflation is not just the schools, you know, our police force share that burden. If you want to talk about a great issue in resignation and, you know, just not wanting to even be in the occupation, our police force, you know, they're going to be coming to us very soon asking for an increased pay because all the counties around us have increased theirs to close to $50,000 in starting pay, somewhere in that neighborhood between 45 and 50K. That's substantial. We're going to see the same impacts with our support staff. We'll see the same impacts with so many other support staff across our county. You know, I was very happy to get to the increase of $1.5 million given to the schools. I don't think I can see that burden going to 2.5 million. I don't believe that is something that's close to, I think it's almost 10, 20% increase from local contribution from 17 million to 19 million-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. That's very substantial. There's not many departments that are getting that level of support. I just think it's going to be setting us up for a very, in the future, where folks are going to be struggling. Lots of folks are going to be struggling. And as Mr. Park has said, you know, I wish we could have gone lower with the real estate tax. There are so many people in the Schuyler community that are going to be struggling in the next 6 to 8 months on how they're going to pay their taxes and how they're going to pay for their cars and how they're going to pay for so many other different items. So I would not be supportive of going over the $1.5 million that we'll be giving our school system, so. All right, with that being said, if we could kind of get some, a consensus from the board of where we're at and how much we're thinking. Mr. Reed, you had originally said that you were going to propose $1 million in addition to the 1.5, which is $2.5 million going to the school system.
That's additional.
Yes, 1.5 plus 1 million.
Yeah, I would like to move that, that we allocate, the money that our staff has already, recommended, and that, we allocate an additional $1 million to the schools.
Okay, you have a motion, do we have a second? We go to discussion after a second.
Second.
Second from Mr. Harvey, discussion.
I want to say a couple of things. I agree with Mr. Parker about that it's not just teachers. Schools are made up of everybody, and certainly the janitors and cafeteria staff and everyone need to make a living too. You know, and doing nothing for them now isn't going to help them much down the line either. But I just think what we do is important.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's go ahead for this, since it's so big, we'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Harvey?
Million increase.
So it's $2.5 million to the schools in operations.
What part of it was already in the budget?
That was what.
So there was 1 million in the budget, or excuse me, $1.5 million in the budget, and this is an additional $1 million, which will bring it to $2.5 million.
Some million addition.
No, it's
Yeah.
2.5.
It's,
He's right. It's
yes, it's $1 million
$1
additional.
More than what's
Right.
published in our packet, yes.
Right.
Yes.
I mean,
You're not doing 2.5 million.
No.
That
1 million.
1 million.
total,
2.5 million.
2.5 million.
Right.
it's total $2.5 million over last year's budget. $1 million more than what was presented here on this screen. $2.5 million
Adding money to this year's budget.
over last year's budget?
No, over the budget.
Over the budget we've already approved.
Okay, yes, $1 million, yes.
I move that we.
We already got a motion. All right, roll call vote.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Parr?
No.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
No. All right, so we have that part of the budget completed with the school system. Staff, is there any other items in the budget that we need to resolve before we can get a motion to approve the budget?
I don't believe so, other than where the 1 million is gonna come from.
I believe there was a general consensus to come from the recurring minus $400. Yeah, so there's $0 in recurring now.
I don't know that that's true. I think that, Mr. Harvey, had stated that he was, you know, at least willing to, take it out of the
That,
capital,
I would,
the cash reserves.
we should take it out of recurring and then show that we got $0. And then if we have any other items, then that would be coming out of the non-recurring. I don't think that would be a good practice.
I would agree, that's a better way.
That would be a bad practice if we went and chose to keep the recurring there and then non-recurring every year. All right, there we go. So
I think that's
Recurring.
big, that's
it's all
the
go.
remainder of the items we need.
All right, so we got that. That's remaining items. Do we have to have a motion as amended? Or can we do a motion, because we just, obviously the budget has changed over this time, or can we just make a motion to approve the budget with the amendments today.
So what I'll do is I'll take
Phil has
this
it.
information, I'll take this information back, I'll recraft the resolutions that we need to adopt and appropriate the budget, incorporating these changes, because it does affect several funds, not just the general fund.
Right. So is there any further action after this?
No, we just need to continue to
Continue the
another
meeting.
meeting to adopt and appropriate the budget.
Okay, got it. Great.
Yeah.
So we will discuss that at the end of our evening meeting.
Mr. Chair, may I just
Yes.
confirm that you did approve the one-time 2.3 million transfer to debt service reserve plus
Correct.
the 610,000 in recurring revenue?
Yes.
For debt service reserve.
That, generally, I don't think we specifically pointed out the 610, but board generally, are you still supportive of
It
that?
seems like we got it.
It seems like a done deal, so I just wanted
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
make sure.
it seems, yeah, but I want to make sure we have a vote on it. It seems like it's an important thing to have a vote on.
I mean, okay, transfer of 600, no, we didn't do that. So give me a motion to keep transfer to debt service reserve of 610,000, realize $57 million debt capacity, 23-24. So we have a motion from Mr. Parker, we have support.
Can you?
Read the staff recommendation.
Okay, I just wanted to go a little more slowly.
It's right there.
I'm just saying.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Second from Mr. Barton, any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll do a vote by acclamation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any abstentions, any objections? Hearing none, that's good. Are you good now?
I believe so.
So she's going to draft a resolution. At the conclusion of our evening meeting, we will continue this meeting to appropriations and approving the budget. We will pick a date at the end of our evening meeting. Sound good? Great. Moving on to reports. Candy, what do you have to report?
Okay, I'll just try to run through the report that was included in your packet fairly quickly. In terms of the COVID-19 coronavirus, the Department of Health data for Nelson County as of June 10th, based upon a 13-week average, we had 2 new cases of the virus and the 7-day average of new daily cases of 2.3. To date, the county has had 2,686 cases of the virus and 37 deaths. And for the CDC, Nelson County is at a low-risk status. Personally, kind of question some of these numbers because I think a lot of people are doing the at-home tests, finding out they're negative, and those aren't getting reported to the health department. So that's just my own personal view of that. In terms of the 2022 general real estate reassessment, the local board of equalization completed its work, and I included an attached report of the summary of that work. The board received 25 appeals with 6 assessments being reduced for a total reduction of $223,700 in value and 0 increases. We can schedule the Board of Equalization to report to the board at an ensuing regular meeting if the chair or the board so desires. I'd like to thank the DOE members and Ms. Juliana Piedra of County Administration who scheduled and documented all of those meetings and did that within her regular workday. The comprehensive plan, a joint board of supervisors and planning commission project kickoff meeting with staff of the Berkeley group was held on May 31st. Process is going to take approximately 20 months to complete with the final draft ready by late summer of 2023. Community engagement was discussed with the project website of www.nelson2042.com being launched around June 16th. A citizen survey being available for completion from July 1st to August 15th, and public workshops to be held on July 13th, July 20th, and August 3rd. Locations and times will be announced with sessions being held in the evening for approximately 1.5 to 2 hours. Citizens are encouraged to complete the survey once it's available and attend the public workshops. And we'd like to thank the planning and zoning staff for spearheading this project. The Piney River Water and Sewer System, primarily the Usemco pump station, has been in a lot of repair lately. The 6-inch force main was replaced, and the remaining work entails replacing both the pump discharge pipes and installation of a new VFD, which is the variable frequency drive, which operates these pumps. Parts have been received, and this work is tentatively scheduled for this week. I saw Paul Truslow this morning, and he said that they were on site today, although I don't know the weather and how long they stayed out there working on the pump station. These repairs should enable the pump station to function for at least 5 more years. However, planning for its replacement is a priority. We have had preliminary discussions with Commonwealth Engineering Services out of Ashland, Virginia. They're going to make a site visit, provide a quote for a new pump station for planning purposes. And as noted, Paul Truslow has been super instrumental in getting all of this work completed amongst all of his other duties. The repair of the termite damage in the courthouse down near the judge's office. We did an unsuccessful invitation for bid process. And so Steve, before he left, reached out to Jamerson Lewis, who's the general contractor that completed that phase of the courthouse project. And they agreed to take on the project and provide pricing for the work somewhere around June 17th. And they try to fit it into their schedule. The new office building on Cal Hill Drive that will house DSS, Building Inspections, Planning and Zoning eventually. PMA Architecture, who was the architecture selected by the interview group, has provided staff with an initial scope of work document in order to begin our contract negotiations for their architectural services. And as of June 10th, they're working to craft the overall agreement for services with addendums to represent each phase of the work. This generally is in 3 phases, which is phase 1 is discussion of the overall project scope and building site assessment. Phase 2 is review and approval of a conceptual design and authorization for that work and for the building and site. And phase 3 is the construction administration phase. So once this contract is finalized, a project kickoff meeting will be scheduled to include staff from administration, buildings and grounds, CSS, building inspections, planning and zoning, and up to 2 board members if so desired. Funds for the A&E services are budgeted in the FY23 budget, and funding for the building construction is to be determined. Typical options are Virginia Resources Authority or bank financing for that particular cost. The Director of Finance and HR position has been advertised. It's been on the county's website. Our usual advertising channels through the Daily Progress, News in Advance, VML and VACO, and also the Virginia Government Finance Officers Association. Deadline for applications is July 1st or until filled by a qualified applicant, and our target start date is August 1st or as soon as possible. We'll schedule interviews as immediately as possible after the closing date. And Linda Staten was instrumental in getting that posted as soon as the ad was ready. And I do believe maybe Mr. Rutherford and Mr. Reed have volunteered to be on that interview committee.
Yes,
The board.
Ernie did.
Okay, very good. Excellent. There's no change in the status to the Renaissance Ridge housing development. Let's see, they have submitted a preliminary major site plan to planning and zoning. It's incomplete and will not be reviewed until a final fully completed site plan is submitted, which could take several months. So that's where that stands. Let's see, we've already talked about the state budget really. And also the county budget, so we'll skip over those. The Albemarle-Charlottesville Regional Jail County Representative and Renovation Expansion Project. As far as our representation, on June 9th, the ACRJ Board of Directors approved the revised member agreement that was endorsed by the board on May 10th. And this provides for an additional Nelson County representative for a total of 3. So this representative shall be either a currently serving Board of Supervisors member or a non-serving Nelson citizen. And given there's no July jail board authority meeting, staff suggests this appointment be considered in time for the August 11th meeting. And currently I represent Nelson on the board, as does the sheriff. So you have an opportunity for a third member here.
Oh.
Yeah. In terms of the renovation and expansion, the jail board request for 25% reimbursement from the state for all of the reimbursable expenses was made to the Board of Local Regional Jails on May 18th. And they're expecting a decision made at their July 2022 meeting. Immediate next steps include seeking approval to move forward with the project from members with presentations to each member jurisdiction prior to the fall of 2022. Thereafter, with approval to move forward from the jurisdictions, from December 22 to June 23, there will be project planning, design and construction schedules, and AE RFP issuance would occur in that time frame. And the current census report from the jail shows Nelson with 1,479 prisoner days, or 14.5% of the total prisoner days for the jail for the month of April. And so this equates to approximately 49 Nelson inmates at ACRJ in April. Additionally, staff reports were included with the packet. Can answer any questions.
Any questions for Katie at this time? Hearing none, moving on
Yeah,
to.
one question. Give me an idea, the previous, time the houses were assessed, how many people complained? Is this less than normal or more than normal?
I'd have to go back and pull the previous report. I could send that to you to let you know. I don't have that information retained.
I can easily say that I had a ton of correspondence more than previously.
But not in terms of actual.
In terms of actual appeals, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, we have those reports.
That's a
and we
Robert
can-
question. Robert,
We
you
can pull
did
the
it.
last one and
You didn't do it this year?
comparison and compare it to.
Never mind. All right. Any other?
Was that some that was questioning about your assessment too low?
There was some. I remember that. Last time there was. All right. Thank you, Candy.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to board reports. Mr. Barton. Nothing. Mr. Harvey. Nothing. Mr. Reed.
I have a couple. I met with Caetano de Campos Lopez, who's the Director of Climate Policy at the Community Climate Collaborative. We discussed, my question to them was how can counties be involved in advocating for positive climate mitigation initiatives. They gave me some really good suggestions, including transit and clean transportation and conversion of fuel oils and things like that, some fairly simple things, and some things that are not so simple. But it was good to meet with he and Susan Cruz, who works also at a collaborative. And they also suggested that TJPDC might be a really good partner to work through in terms of things that they're advocating for. So that was good. The other report I have is that I attended the public hearing that the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality held for application of biosolids on agricultural lands in Nelson County. The reason I had to have a public hearing is because there were a certain number of new applications for biosolid application, so they did a public hearing. Found out a lot of information. Some of the most interesting were that the biosolids that these applications would cover that would be applied on fields in Nelson County are all come from Northern Virginia, Maryland, could even come from as far as New York. The service authorities' biosolids actually are picked up by a firm in Weir's Cave, and they go over to the Shenandoah Valley to be applied on fields there. Seems kind of like a strange juxtaposition of poop traveling on roads from long distances to be applied in different places instead of more locally, but that's just the way it is. The health department normally does not get terribly involved, but people who have health problems can ask for, and adjoining landowners can ask for increases in buffers and things like that, because there are some hazards that could be connected with this. It's also interesting that they don't do any cumulative effects analysis. If a lot of these lands are concentrated in one area, they don't do any additional analysis to look at the impacts of all of them. They're all looked at on an individual basis, which I found to be possibly problematic, but those things have to get addressed in places other than at the county level. But I did want to note that there would be a 30-day comment period in July for the final plan. This was just the public hearing that led up to it, so that'll be coming up later as well. That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Parr?
EMS council met last month, and we're going to go back to monthly meetings starting June 21st. One thing that was requested, Candy, is that Russ get back in the habit of attending those meetings. And I know that's something you had said you're going to be at the June meeting, I believe.
Yes.
Hopefully. Okay. And let's see. Do you know where we are on the generator for the men's building? Apparently.
I do not, I haven't heard anything about the generator.
Okay.
Generator
We can
there.
talk about that.
Where was that
At the EMS building here in Livingston,
Station 2 building.
Station 2. I mean, my note says Livingston needs their generator ASAP. I'm assuming it's Station 2, or would that be Company 1? Company 1, yeah. Yeah, because I'm at Livingston. I know somebody's pretty high up in the priority list of needing a generator replaced.
Yeah, I don't know whether we want to wait and figure all of them need to be done.
Right, and that's why they were saying, let's maybe start, getting some of them done, so they don't come all at once.
The biggest ones to stop.
Yeah.
It should be done.
Yeah.
I have no problem going ahead and replacing them.
If we could get a quote from
When you do that, you also need to say, okay, we'll give her 9 or 10 more.
So is this for the Livingston Fire Department?
Nelson EMS.
No,
Okay.
no, I think it's,
Okay, so we're talking about.
I think it's for the fire department, Company 1, right, Tommy?
I think, yeah.
I just wrote, I should have been more precise in my notes, I wrote Livingston, so but I'm pretty sure that's Company 1.
Okay.
I'll confirm with Danny,
We'll go ahead and get quotes.
and we'll be getting together, and then there is inspections of the departments coming up in October. And I don't know, there wasn't anybody from Gladstone at the meeting to discuss how they're doing or what's going on there, but that was something that the council discussed, and a little concerned about that inspection coming up. That's all I have.
Well, one of the things that needs to be expressed in there, we expect you to be participating in these other things, you expect to be participating in that.
There is a very low percentage of responding calls.
Well, the problem is we in Nelson County ended up building all of that apartment system out very, very close to the line with the adjoining counties. So we end up, our coverage area in those individuals is very high to out-of-county people. But, I mean, we funded it. We can keep in mind.
All right. That's it. All right, moving on. TJPDC, we had our first in-person meeting. It's very exciting and actually monumental because We hadn't been in there for how many years, Christine? Two whole years. So we've been attending virtually. It is my hope that being in person will have a lot more interaction and more of a personal experience. There have been individuals who I've never seen physically in 2 years. So it's kind of a strange thing to know. I've heard and seen pictures, but I finally got to see them, which was really great. And over that course, many adjustments at the PDC and having Christine take over, which is wonderful. So looking forward to more success in the next year as we close the gap in our employment needs. So that's about all I have for that particular item. Oh yes, one other piece, the short-term rental conversation. Originally, I was trying to meet with some preliminary stakeholders for short-term rentals, and during the time period we were hiring Candy, one of those evenings, we had our special meeting, and I had canceled that. So hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'll get another date on the board so that I can meet with some short-term rental people, and then have our county government meeting after that, once we can pinpoint some folks in that industry to be part of the conversation. So, all right, moving on to appointments real quick. Let's try to go each one. We don't need to go through, some of these are contested, not contested necessarily, but we have multiple applications. The first one, we have Diane McNaught. She looks like she is asking to be reappointed. Is there a motion to approve Diane McNaught?
So moved.
We have a motion from Mr. Reed. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Harvey. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we're just going to do a vote by acclamation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, moving on to the Nelson County Library Advisory Committee. The North District does not have an applicant at this time, Mr. Harvey. And it appears Ellen is not seeking to be reappointed. Gloria Ashley would like to be reappointed. Gloria is in my district, and as the chair's asked that someone make a motion for the chair to approve Gloria Ashley back on the Nelson County Library Advisory Committee.
Can you do that for me, Mr. Reed?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second from Mr. Barton. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, vote by acclamation for Gloria Ashley. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any objections, abstentions? Hearing none. Moving on to Region 10. At Ellen, Bouto.
I want to make sure we send her a thank you.
Oh, yeah, it's appropriate.
She's been very active.
That is very appropriate, and please do so. And that might be a good standard practice for this county. If someone sees not be on there. Region 10 Community Services Board, Patricia Heggie would like to be reappointed. Is there a motion to approve Patricia?
So moved.
Motion from Mr. Reed, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Barton, any discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's do vote by acclamation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any objections? Or abstentions? Hearing none. Moving on to Nelson County Social Services Board, Edith Napier, West District. Mr. Parr, this is in your district.
I move that we approve.
There is another applicant, that's what Aaron Fleming. Mr. Parr?
I haven't heard any, all I know of Aaron is what was in the packet. Resume, impressive resume. Edith's done a fantastic job, served with her currently, and my recommendation that we continue with Edith.
All right, that's West District. We have a motion from Mr. Parr. Is there a second?
Yes.
Second from Mr. Barton. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, do vote by acclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Hearing none. Moving on to Nelson County Social Services Board for Brad Johnson. Can we, since this is in my district, I do suggest that we appoint Mr. Johnson. Can I get a motion to, we have a motion from Mr. Parr. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Second from Mr. Barton. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I will do a vote by acclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any objections, abstentions? Hearing none. Moving on to Planning Commission. Philippa Prohl, North District. Mr. Harvey, would you like to approve Philippa for a reappointment? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Reed. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll do a vote by acclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any objections, abstentions? Hearing none. Moving on to Central District, Robin Hausner Planning Commission. Mr. Reed.
I'd like to move that Robin Hausner be appointed to the Central District.
Okay. We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Parr, any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll do a vote by acclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any objections, abstentions? Hearing none. Moving on to East District Planning Commission. The chair wants to put Chuck Amante in the East District to continue to represent. Can I get a motion from somebody to do that for me?
So moved.
Motion from Mr. Parr. Any discussion? Or second, I need second. Second.
I will second.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll do a vote by acclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any objections, abstentions? Hearing none. To make this simple, since everyone on the Nelson County Services Authority is seeking reappointment, is there anybody who has any issues with those three? If we don't hear anything, and there's no other applications, can we get a motion to appoint Robert McSwain, Mr. Reed, and Mr. Shemp back onto the Nelson County Service Authority?
I move.
We have a motion, Mr. Barton. Do we have a second?
Do we have any other candidates for Central District?
I know.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. Make sure you vote no. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I haven't said it. Aye. Any objections, abstentions? Hearing none, moving on. Board of Building Appeals, we have one, Robert Yoder, who's asking for reappointment.
We actually have two. So we have Robert Yoder and Robin Meyer.
So,
And I did speak with Robin Meyer today.
okay, so they both want to be reappointed.
They do.
All right, let's get a motion to approve both of those folks for Board of Building Code Appeals.
So moved.
Motion. Second. Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, moving on to Economic Development Authority. All these folks are looking to be reappointed. I'd like to get a motion to approve these folks to get reappointed. Nate Hall and Alfonso Taylor.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Yeah.
We have a second from Mr. Barton, any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Region 10 2000, that's a new one. Region 2000, we need to keep both Mr. Carter and Ms. McGarry on there for certain circumstances. This is the best move for us to do. Can we get a motion to that effect?
Yes.
We have a motion, Mr. Barton, any discussion? Second. Second, I'm sorry, second. Sorry, I've done this such 6 times in a row. Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on to the TJPDC. I would like to be reappointed, and I believe Mr. Reed would like to take this Dylan's spot. Can we get a motion to approve myself and Mr. Reed on the TJPDC?
Who we taking off?
Dylan.
You don't think staff needs to be on there?
No, I don't think at this time. Can we get a motion? Mr. Barton.
So moved.
Yeah.
Mr. Parr is making motion. Mr. Barton,
Yes.
second, great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, great. Moving on to the Agricultural Forestry District Advisory Committee. We had a member, it sounds like he passed away.
Yeah.
Sad to hear that.
We
We sent a
need a
letter.
replacement from.
I don't even know how to say it. Andre
Dane.
Dane. So definitely send a letter to them as well. We don't have any applicants at this time, correct?
No applicant.
No applicants, so we will continue this into the next meeting, and this is at large, so anybody can get on.
Is that the only vacancy we have on that? Because at one time, didn't we have one for a while that kept showing up?
I'll double check, but that's the only one I saw, and that's a producer position
Yeah.
on that committee.
All right, is that all the appointments we need to do?
Yes, please.
Great. Moving on to correspondence. Mr. Barton, any correspondence? No? Mr. Harvey? Mr. Reed?
I just wanted to make an announcement about the Juneteenth celebration at the Nelson Heritage Center coming up next weekend. There's an art exhibit on Friday the 17th. There's a youth extravaganza on the 18th, and the tailgate community picnic is on the 19th.
All right, thank you. Please make note. Try to be there. Moving on to directives. Ms. Barton? No, Mr. Harvey?
Nope.
Mr. Reed?
Nope.
All right, Mr. Parr?
Just one question for
Yes.
Andy. Do we have where are we on the fire hydrant, in Piney River? Do you know anything about?
No, I haven't heard anything new about that.
Okay. I just knew that one price was thrown out considerably high.
What's the,
Fire hydrant relocation.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, moving that one that, has been off and on for so many times here recently, that is repaired now. It's not sitting there with an artifact, but where it's located, it's just not very conducive. The way the water runs off, it's got a leak, below the surface, so it's always wet there. It's a much better location, closer to the stop sign at Firehouse Road in Lowesville. We want to move it over there so the trucks can have easier access to fill it up when they come through.
do we have that capability?
What?
I think the service authority would be the one
Which one
probably,
is it?
yes, I think they would take care of the relocation.
But it's part of the Nelson County, it's not part of the service authority system. I mean, they would be the ones doing the work, but it's our system.
Right, yeah, we can ask them to do it.
Yeah, they provided one quote.
But I think, I'm pretty sure, and that's one of the things we need to find out is, are they charging hookup fees included in that quote? Or is that just parts and labor to relocate?
Well, the hookup fees and stuff should be added.
All I know is the price was like $13,000 to relocate the fire.
Wow. That's-
And the parts were like 3,500 or something.
We'll just, yeah,
It was substantial. I would like us to get some closure on that and see where we are.
it needs to be done.
Yes, it does.
Wait,
And they were saying they're just gonna go under and cap off our below surface where that leak, there's a leak in the one we had.
all right. Anything else? All right, moving on, we have to go into a closed session. Mr. Reed?
I'd like to move the Nelson County Board of Supervisors convene in closed session to discuss the following as permitted by Virginia Code Sections 2.2-37-11A7. Consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to actual litigation where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body. Litigation pertaining to the Region 2000 Services Code.
Now, we will come, I second this.
All right, we have a second discussion.
Now, we will come back in session, making an announcement, or can we just say we'll come back tonight and
No, this is a closed session, so we're just gonna go in, have discussion with Mr. Payne, and then we'll do the two motions to get out, and then we'll come back this evening. All right, evening meeting's been set, so, all right,
You mentioned before about budget, we're in the budget.
we're gonna continue that after our meeting, our evening meeting. We have to pick a date.
What? Be there. Oh,
We haven't decided the date, yes, correct.
We're not gonna vote on it.
No, we can't. All right, motion second discussion on, let's do a roll call vote.
Mr. Harvey?
yes.
Mr. Barton? Mr. Parr?
Yeah.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes. All right, folks,